I love ReZero. ReZero Season 3. This is a show that I've been wanting to hold off until tomorrow to talk about, honestly, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that with tomorrow's episode coming to about, I figure I want to talk about this. ReZero Season 3. Is it worth watching? I'm going to tell you what my thoughts and opinions are about this. So ReZero Season 3, this is a show that originally came out of last year, of the fall season 2024, and is officially wrapped up of this year of March of 2025. And this is by the good folks at White Fox Studios, which, given the discography of White Fox, I don't think there's really an introduction to them at this point. White Fox is probably one of the most iconic, most well-known animation studios to come out of recent memory over the last decade. The fact that this was originally under a different studio and they split off into a different studio per se is really crazy, considering that the amount of really good shows they came out with right off the gate. I mean, who can forget the famous Steins Gate series that they came out the gate swinging and really pushing the boundaries of like the romance side of anime to the infamous Hataroko Sama or the Devil's Apart, which is probably, as I probably talked about in the future video, one of the most influential isekai animes to come out of recent memory, to probably their biggest popular series, Akame ga Kill. But it wasn't until 2016 that White Fox Studios started to take itself in the more serious, in a more different direction to really stand out from the other isekai shows that were coming around this time. So it's kind of interesting that with Hataku Maosama being the gold standard, or literally like saying the groundwork of what was to come with the isekai that was going to set itself for the next 10 plus years, they would then drop the first version of ReZero, this first season exactly, which was 25 episodes long, came out in 2016. This show to this day is one of my favorite standout isekai shows out there, and the fact that this show, along with a plethora of other isekai shows, were a huge standout at the time. Not just ReZero, but you had the likes of Konosuba that was standing out. You also had the likes of Overlord that stood out. Even Yojo Senki or Saga of Tanya the Evil, which sadly to this day may not ever get a second season. These shows were at the time before 2018 2019 were the biggest isekai shows come out during this period. And pretty much when season one of ReZero wrapped up, I definitely was in high hopes and high regards to wondering where they're gonna take ReZero into. And that's when we got season two, which came out in 2020 of that summer. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this was amazing. This was absolutely great. This second season, to put it in a nutshell, really was all about Subaru and his struggles and everything that he's been through throughout the first season would carry over to the second season. Of course, the ReZero franchise was not safe from the whole season two part one, season two part two trend, which again I already expressed in the previous video that about how I hate the trend. But regardless, I did watch season two part two, and I think that it's a masterpiece. I'm gonna be honest with you. Still to this day, after its official wrap up of season two, this second half of season two is absolutely my favorite of ReZero to this day. I think it is a must watch. It is essentially everything that they took from the first half of season two, but now it's elevated. It's so much resolutions being resolved, and arguably one of the greatest character developments that a main character has ever been written and told to this day. So it was a pretty short while that, given that season two, part two came out, we would eventually get ReZero season three. Which, given my expectations of season two, I went to season three with super high expectations. After all, season two was super amazing with the animation, with the storytelling, with the character development, everything. And what's interesting about season three and why it's wrapping up now when there's only 16 episodes is that they did broke season three into two parts. So the first 8 episodes was essentially the attack arc, and then the later 8 episodes, which was the counterattack arc, would then start airing of February of this year. And I gotta say, for starters, that probably was the best move that White Fox Studios could do to split up these two arcs, really get people in high hopes, high anticipation what's to come, because it kind of showcases what you really want to focus on throughout when you go into season three. And it's hard for me to talk about spoilers, talking about what the show is all about and where it's leading up to without having to spoil something. Because again, I think I'll tell you right off the bat, if you haven't watched season two, if you haven't even watched season one of ReZero, you need to watch those two seasons before you get into season three. Because there are some amazing standout characters in this third season that are absolutely phenomenal. We have some new characters in the show that I absolutely freaking love. We have new witches, new villains that are super menacing, super powerful, super. Oh my gosh, what is Subaru gonna do to save the day? And I love it. I absolutely freaking love it. So, I'm gonna do something a little bit different from all my other reviews and talk about a lot of the main characters that will appear in season three that I absolutely freaking love. First off, I love all the witches in the show. I love all the villains in this third season. But if I had to narrow it down to just one villain that I absolutely think stood out the most and was even foreshadowed in the second season, to be exact, Regulus Cornelius. This dude, man, the voice actor for Regulus Cornelius, he really crushed on this one, man. He really put his left foot forward and decided to run with it. This was amazing. I love the voice acting of this character and the backgrounds to how he became who he is and what would happen to him in the third season. But yeah, I think out of all the witches that came out in the third season, he stands out as the best of the best. There's obviously a ton more that I could talk about, but I probably would be here all day talking about it. And then we get into characters that I wasn't expecting to really talk about or dive into in this third season. From Priscilla or Prisca Benedict, who again, prior to this, we only got to know her a little bit throughout the first season, but she never really stood out to me, which was one of the main criticisms I had from the first season of ReZero was that there wasn't a lot of standout with the other characters surrounding Subaru, surrounding Emilia. But in this third season, we finally get to dive into a lot of the characters' deeper lore, how powerful they are, what makes them stand out, and I love her character instantly. She's instantly become like one of my most favorite characters ever. There's also Al, which trust me when I say this, even though Al only appears in like a few episodes here and there, Al's presence makes a huge standout in this third season. Like when you see this guy, you may think that he's like a knockoff version of Goblin Slayer from Goblin Slayer, but believe me when I say that Al is not someone you want to fuck with. He's pretty damn powerful and he will kick ass and take names. And then we have our first new character, another new character, I would say, Liliana. Liliana's character and the voice actor who does it, I think this might be a main criticism for many, is that people will be completely turned off by the voice actress who voices Liliana right now because it's super high pitched, it's squeaky. I get that. But trust me when I say this, there is an episode in this third season that stands out as to why Liliana is the way she is, why she is the bard character that she is, and how important she plays in the pivotal role in this third season. Because again, she is hinted at the very beginning of the third season, and they play her character out and flesh her out super well. Then we have Sophie, another character that's super big, super important in the ReZero Season 3 lore, which I kind of can't really dive into. I mean, you could probably read yourself, but Sylvie's character, how she became to be, and what it takes for her to break free, per se, is absolutely amazing. A huge standout in this third season that, again, just trying to talk about it would unfortunately spoil it a little bit. But by far, I think my favorite character development from the show since the season two officially ended, Garfield. Garfield has been amazing to watch, and like I said, if you remember season two, how when we first met Garfield and how it ended with that climactic fight with Garfield and one of the witches, you can tell that that event, that moment in season two, carries over into season three in a huge way to when now Garfield is like really scarred from it, and he's trying to fight his way into it to being the king of the beasts that he is known for and such. But believe me when I say Garfield's character and his background and what happened to his family and everything in between goes into full throttle in this third season, and it's a huge standout. And then finally, for the last huge character highlight shout out, I have to go to Reinhard, man. Man, it's kind of interesting to think that Reinhard at one point was essentially like this the person that kickstarted Subaru's career or Subaru's journey into the isekai world, but he never really stood out past that point outside of like a few moments here and there in season one. But in season three, we finally get to dive into his his sword saint background, his family background, the complications that happened within his family, and the legacy, or I would say even the dark legacy of what happened to um, his family and how tattered and shattered it has become. And I think that's the thing about season three in a nutshell is that ReZero season three really is, instead of focusing on Subaru, who has been the main focus throughout season one and definitely throughout season two, in season three, they really finally decided to flesh out a lot of the characters that at one point a lot of people have forgotten in season one and to an extent season two. And I absolutely love that. Now, of course, you had Subaru, Emilia, and your typical and all your other characters that are also going through the motions, going through the changes, taking everything they learned from the second season and applying it to this third season. And they do it super well. Again, this show is written and told so beautifully that I can't really give enough praises to the show as it is. Now, obviously, because this is split up to two arcs technically, do I prefer one arc over the other? Unfortunately, yes. I prefer the counterattack arc over the attack arc that came out earlier last year. Now, do I think that it is the weakest of the arc? It is, but it's not like the worst thing ever. It still has a pretty pivotal role when going into the counterattack arc. And again, I think I'll tell you right now is that White Fox is still once again crushing it with the animation, with the music, the soundtrack, the the fight sequences of the show, the range of emotion that these voice actors and voice actresses put into each of these characters, especially all the characters I've highlighted here up to this point, have been a huge standout to me and is one of the strongest like showings to come out of this year and of last year, because if you haven't remembered, I did put ReZero season 3 in within the top 10 best anime of 2024. And now, given that the counterattack arc has officially ended, I absolutely love this counterattack arc. And again, I think this is definitely, in a way, it's technically a contender for best anime of 2025 as a result, if we're focusing only on the counterattack arc that came out for this year only. Um, Now, again, there are some criticisms about this third season that are warranted, that is understandable from the fact that again there's a lot of characters happening all at once, and it's gonna take a while to like get used to every character. Again, there's also moments where there are moments like something happens in season three, but you realize like, hey, I feel like I remember this from back in season two or even season one to an extent. I need to go back and watch it. There's moments where I had that moment happening, and look, I get it. It's because I'm older and I should be going back to watching these episodes to understand. But I mean, given that season three was happening during that moment, during that time, I feel like I should have full knowledge of like what has happened up to this point. And I think that's another criticism that a lot of people have said is that unless you know what happened in season two and the previous seasons before it, you're not going to understand what season three has to offer. And that's understandable. I get that. But you can't deny that everything that has happened throughout the show plays a pretty big role in the biggest comeback that has happened in the season three arc per se. So overall, I wish I could talk more about the show, but I feel like we'll be going to huge spoiler territory. So I'm gonna wrap this up in saying that Season 3 is a must watch. It is amazing. They're still crushing again. And once again, as I mentioned from ReZero Season 1 and 2, ReZero Season 3 is absolutely amazing. Do I think is it stronger and better than Season 2? Not really, but it definitely is up there as like it can 100% rival that of Season 2. And again, I think with the fact that we are coming down to the final episode that's going to be dropping tomorrow as of me dropping this video, I think Season 3 is going to stand out as one of the best animes to come out of 2025. So, if I remember correctly, I gave the first arc, the attack arc, like an 8 out of 10. If I were to do the counter attack arc as of right now, I would probably give it like a. I give it like a maybe like a light 9 out of 10. So, averaging the scores, calculating it in my brain, between myself and I would say I would give it. God, I would have to give this a light 9. It is that good. It is almost perfect. There are just moments of the show that it does hold itself back. And keep in mind, the 16th episode hasn't aired yet, so I can't really go at it by at full throttle. But I think this is a light 9 to maybe a strong 8. That's why I would put it at. So yeah, ReZero Season 3. And I hope that you give this show a watch and wanted to talk about this show because I figured why freaking not. So yeah, that's about it. I'll see you in the next one. Later.